the pull from Salesforce section, this whole section does what it says. It pulls data from Salesforce, and there's different ways to do that. There's reports. So if you click on reports, it's very straightforward. It just pulls the list of recent reports. You can search your reports, something like this. And
so these are reports that exist in the system.
That's right. That's the Salesforce reports that you have already created.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So let me see which one I have. Let's try this one. So running the report, and there's some options for every pool. You can choose it to use column headers, create data tables, enforce tick lists. I would just keep it as it is, unless you want to change something. Like if you want to, for example, put a last refresh timestamp somewhere. But actually, let's make it a little bit more complicated. So let's do B1 as the timestamp, and we can say last refreshed, something like that. Right, and then we'll need to put this into, let's do A3, right? This report. Oh gosh, I clicked on create. So there was a checkbox there again. Yeah, that's actually important. Pay attention to this. It's create new sheet. It's always checked. So it will, by default, it will always create it on a new sheet. Not a big deal here. I'll just need to retype this. And there's no data, but just, you know what, so that I don't waste your time, imagine there's data here.
Yeah, I get that. If there was data, there would be data there.
Yep. And so the way it works is, and this has to do with data sources, we call every connection to a report or a query, the get button, I'll show it to you later, which you already used. We call it a data source, and you can have multiple. You can have multiple data sources in the same sheet, and then in multiple sheets, of course. So you can have multiple data sources. Refresh button refreshes this sheet, so all data sources in this sheet. You also have an option to refresh all. This will go through all sheets that you have connected to Salesforce and repull your queries, your reports, anything that you connect will get repulled. The way it's usually used by our customers is they put together a template with multiple reports pulling into multiple sheets, and then they summarize the data in the main sheet in a pivot table, graphs, formulas. They put together a nice chart on the main table, hit refresh all, and at this point it refreshes all data from Salesforce, recalculates the formulas, and there's a nice report for the management, for example.
Okay.
All right, so that's this. Again, that's pretty much it about the reports. You can just pull them and refresh them.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome.
And if the report changes in Salesforce, if you add a column or add a filter, the next time it runs, it will run the new report, because it's basically running the report that's in Salesforce. So there's nothing saved here in the spreadsheet except for the ID of the report.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, so now let's do something that you're familiar with, get data. This dialog box, there's also options here similar to the reports. But here it lets you build a query, but you can use any query basically. The controls here are just for you to start with something. So let's do like a simple opportunity query, amount, close date, ID. I think we need name and stage name, right? That's the minimum number of fields that you need to create opportunities. They are mandatory. Here, let me uncheck this auto generate. You can do things like drag and drop. For example, if I wanted to pull an especially long field, or it's true for the related fields. They count related fields, so you can actually drill down into the related objects and just drag and drop here. And as you can see, like, instead of typing this whole thing, because you don't want to type this, you can just drag and drop and do that. Another thing that is not very obvious in the query builder, which we probably don't know about, is let's create a new sheet here. Last refresh. So let's do this as well. I will uncheck the create new. It's right here, create new worksheet. And what I'm gonna do is create another field here, say stage. Let's say we want to close last stage. And now for the filter, I will type it manually, although you can create one filter using the controls. So to create one filter, you would do to auto generate again, and stage name. What is my stage name? Stage name equals, in this case it's null. I'll replace this with something custom. So if you do square brackets here and say B2, that means grab the value from the spreadsheet in B2 cell in the current worksheet. If you want to grab from a different sheet, you would do something like this, and it will, or you can use multiple things here. You can grab the whole column from a table, you can grab a range of values, but in this case, this is like the simplest example. Let's do B2 and let's run this. So all looks correct to me. You see, I'll create the pick list values here. So another thing I want to show. Gosh, how is this? How do I not have any opportunities? That's not. Oh, no opportunities in closed last stage. Oh, wait. Yeah. Let's refresh this. No.
Is it closed lost or closed? Is it?
Oh, right.
D at the end? I think it's with a D at the end, right?
Yes. See, so, and that's why. I didn't have that. Yeah. See, now it's all closed lost. So what I usually do is I copy, because when you pull data from Salesforce and it's a pick list and that checkbox is checked, create pick list values, you get these nice drop downs. You probably noticed. So what I usually do, I copy this, paste it here, and this way now I don't have to guess what my pick list values are. So
so that option where you had that when you selected that checkbox, it actually shows all the pick list values.
That's right. Yeah, and okay. if it's a multi-select pick list, it will also show. Okay, actually, I should show that to you as well. I'm not sure if I have any multi-select on the opportunity though. Wait a second. Well, another thing. Yeah, right now you see I clicked on get data and it tries to create a new query. The selection has to be inside of the data that you pulled to pull up the existing one. So if I do this, now it's.
Yeah, I figured that part out.
Yeah. So do we have a multi-select here? That would be nice. Probably not. I'll show it to you later. So multi-select would be double-click into a multi-select cell. It shows a dialog box, and you can do multi-selection.
Okay.
But here, I just want to show you. You can just select the range here, hit refresh, and it pulls the specific opportunities. And you can do these filters. You can filter anything. It can be by owner name, by opportunity name, code, by account, whatever you want to do. You can do here.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a quick question. Sure. When you hit get data and you have multiple tabs open in a workbook, does it work off of the tab that you clicked on prior to get data, or does it, if I click another sheet, will it bring the data into the new sheet?
Okay, so this is controlled by this checkbox. So if this is not checked, it will pull the data into the currently active sheet, this one. Wherever, if you set it up to go to A1, it will just overwrite the whole thing. So be careful with that. Right? Yeah. Create new worksheet, we'll create a new worksheet, again, in the active workbook, because you may have multiple workbooks open. So in the active workbook, it will create a new sheet and pull the data there.
Okay, so it's whatever is currently active.
That's right.
Where I start the button from.
That's right. Yes. Okay. Because I can right now, it's modeless, so I can create a new sheet and uncheck this. And now, let me show you.
I always get nervous, so I usually close out of get data, move to the sheet that I want it to be in, and then open it back up.
Yeah, you don't have to. It works like this as well. So I wanted to show you the multi-select dependent, and where is my controlling? Controlling dependent. Do we have just a multi-select? Yeah, I'll pull some pick. So now this create new worksheet is not checked, so I'm expecting it to just pull into the currently active sheet, which is sheet 6. So what I wanted to show though is a pick list multi-select. So if I double click and so see, it's not very pretty because I have it's running on a Mac in a virtual box, but still you can basically select multiple, because with pick lists it's very hard to, if you were to type it in, you'd have to separate them by the values by semicolons and things like that. This is actually not working for me now anymore.
I'm assuming there'd be like an enter or save button. And
there should be an OK button right there. Oh yeah, okay, I pressed enter. Okay. So
that's really cool right there.
Yeah, it is there. I'll need to take a look at this. So, but I can see that in some display resolutions it doesn't really work very well. Yeah, but still, if you see it the same way, let me know, because we'll need to fix that.
Okay.
Another thing with pick list is if you have controlling and dependent pick lists. So for example, right here, I have a controlling pick list that says car, motorcycle, or truck. And if I select car in this row, in the dependent one, you will only see the cars. So for example, BMW, right? If I were to select truck here, this is going to be a different list.
Oh, wow.
In the sense, so it respects the dependencies. However, the controlling has to be selected first, because if I were to open the dependent, now it has all the options, because nothing is selected in the controlling.
So what if like say you got all this information and say for example truck, those three, and then you say, okay, I want to add another dependent value for truck, like let's just say it's I don't know, a Jeep, right?
Yeah.
You just type that in and then do an update, and then it would insert that value.
No, I don't think it's gonna work though. So if you want to do that, you would need to check, remove the pick list enforcement here and just use regular values, because pick list.
Gotcha.
If I were to type something, it will tell me that.
Oh, okay, I see. So actually, it won't allow you.
Yeah, it won't allow me. Although it's not right if the pick list is not restricted.
Yeah, if it's not a restricted pick list.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Probably need to fix this to check if it's a restricted pick list, then make it like this, and if it's not, then let you type something in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah, at this point you would need to just remove these, and these are data validations in Excel. So
you just remove it from there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you go, where is that? Sir, I keep losing things in Excel. So see, right, you would do any value here, and now you can type things in.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, yeah, not ideal. But you brought up a good point. Let me write this down. It's good. Make it even better.
Yeah. No. I mean, this is already really nice.
All right. Okay, so that's that. Let me go back to the demo. Data sources, as I mentioned, we already pulled multiple. So by default, it just shows the data sources available on the same sheet. And again, if I were to pull a report into J1 opportunities, don't create new worksheet. Should be quick, it's empty. Oh no, it's not. So now I have two, and my refresh is going to update both of them.
Oh, because they're both on the same sheet. I got
It's because they're same on the same sheet. Refresh all would go through all the sheets, but this is
okay.
Yeah. There's no currently there's no way to refresh just one, except for running a flow step. But I'll get to it later.
Okay.
And why did I put? Well, I wanted to show you that by default it shows the data sources on the same sheet, and you can double click into it, and if you want to make any changes, and reports will show you a report. You can change the report, but you can also see all your data sources in the whole document. Check that box, and again, edit them without having to switch to different sheets.
Okay.
So that's that. Let's see. Okay, we'll probably work with this one, but let me do. Maybe there's more data here. All right, so oh gosh, there's 5,000 records.
Do you in terms of which versions of Excel does it work best with? I'm running 2013. And I'm just wondering if maybe I need to upgrade or it's just my computer. Sometimes like it hangs up a little bit.
Oh, it doesn't. I don't think it depends on the Excel you're running. Although they do come up with new versions. So I hope they make them work faster. But it's mostly the computer. If you are using an older computer, it would be slower.
Yeah, it might be time for an upgrade for me.
Yeah. All right. So, and I wanted to show you the last part of the pool data, and it's not very widely used, but it's still there. So I'll show it to you. So in case you don't have, let's say I only have IDs of my records, and I want to pull the rest of the fields. I can do that with this query rows function, which essentially what it does is it runs a query for every row in the selected range, and it pulls data for empty fields. So wherever there's an empty cell or multiple cells, it will pull the empty columns based on the populated columns. So for example, in the first five columns, it will pull all these columns based on the ID, which is unique and it's fine. Here, for example, if I were to do this, remove the IDs, it will pull data based on, and it only works on the same object, so it's not looking at the on this. So it will pull opportunities where amounts for each row. It's basically going to go like this: if amount is 100, name is this, and stage is this, pull that opportunity and populate close date, ID, and this.
Oh, okay. So it can match on a variety of different fields. Okay.
That's right, and it's different for every row. So you can have multiple different empty cells. So let me run this. And you need the mappings here. So you need to. So I'll uncheck this because I'm afraid. Or maybe this is going to. Let me check. I'm not sure this works though. So if that doesn't work, I'm sorry. But I want to see it for myself. Let's do query rows. So yeah, you can specify whether it's going to be an exact match or just contains. Just also be careful with that, because if you have one, for example, in the name and it contains, it will pull all names where there's not one, right? So let me run this. So see, it's pretty slow.
Wow. Still though,
but it fills it out. Be careful with a lot of, so every row is a query. So it's an API call to Salesforce.
Okay.
And like if you have thousands of them, that's going to take forever, and it's going to use up a lot of API calls. Mostly it will take forever because 2,000 calls is not such a big deal, but the speed is not that great.
So for here, right? So you selected A4 through A19, but when it did the matching, it was based off of for where there wasn't an ID, it was based off of all of those fields.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. So for everything, even for updates and inserts, it works off of a selection, but we always use the whole table. So the selection can be anywhere in the table. Gotcha. It will still use the mappings, and right here, the mapping, all the columns in this table are mapped. If I were to uncheck something, it's basically the same concept as an update.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So now let's switch to updates. So I'm not going to go into every single button here. it's just because they're pretty much the same. Delete deletes records from Salesforce based on.
What is undelete? Sorry, what is undelete?
Yeah,
Is that
so let me show
removing it from the recycle bin?
That's right. Yeah. So if I were to delete them right now, right, these records, if I have too many, anyways, they're deleted. But now, if I changed my mind and I wanted to undelete, I still have the IDs, so I can do undelete selected, and they will get removed from the recycle bin.
Okay. All right. That seems
It's my favorite go back button.
Yeah. Well, and you always have the option to go to the recycle bin and remove records from there.
Yeah.
So delete is ironically the least damaging function here.
Yeah.
All right. So then I'll do the update. You know what? Let me do the upsert instead. It's up because these you probably noticed these dialogs are the same, right? But with the upsert, it will let me show you some specifics there. So again, this dialog box, same thing. It's mappings. You map the columns. If I wanted, so this is not very straightforward. So if I wanted to associate my records, and it's usually when inserting records, when creating records, if you want to associate them with a parent record by external ID, there are at the end of the list, of the field list, there's always fields from parents. So we pull all parents that have external ID fields. In this case, account, price, book, and contact have external ID fields, and this is the external ID field for the account. So I'll need to map this. And it will, again, and right now it's already associated with account with this external ID, so nothing is going to happen. And then for the upsert, I will specify the ID and show you how to pull IDs from newly created records back to the table. And that's here. So this setting, that basically tells the tool to, whenever a record is created or updated, it doesn't really matter. But when updated, it doesn't make sense to do it because it's the same ID. But when it's created, you want this ID to be populated here in the ID column, I can type in C. So that's column C, and it tells it, and it can be C, D, E, and now I'll overwrite all my data. But you can have multiple here, but usually it's just one. So it will populate the ID back to that column. And let me show you how that works. And it didn't. Oh yeah, right. So external ID has more. This is a test org, so I assigned it to multiple. So let's do it differently. Let's upsert, but remove this altogether. We don't want to use the parent external ID. Right. So you run this, and so right here it says which records were created and which were updated. Because the ones that had ID in this column got updated, but the ones that didn't have the ID got created, but the ID got populated back into this column. So now if you wanted to change something in the newly created records, you can do that by running the same upsert, and it will now say updated.
Okay. Column I, is that also the same ID? Column I, is that? Yeah,
that's the same ID. What it does is it basically moves the ID from this column into this column.
Gotcha. Okay.
This makes it, you can do it manually, but
no, it makes it much easier. Yeah. No.
Yeah, and then this is mostly done for scenarios when you want to run another thing, like another upload after creating. So let's say you're creating opportunity line items. You first will create the opportunity, then you'll create the product, then you'll create opportunity line item. And like when creating opportunity, you're pulling the IDs back to the data, and you can reuse the same table to upload multiple objects, basically.
Gotcha.
All right, so that's it. And now, because I ran this, let me dive into the flows functionality. We have this notion of flow steps, like flows and flow steps. It has nothing to do with flows in Salesforce. It's our own thing. Which basically,
okay. I thought that had to do with flows in Salesforce. Okay.
No. So it's a flow. So every sheet here is considered like a flow. You can run multiple things there, and it consists of flow steps. So whenever you run a query or run an update, it automatically creates one flow step. And that, you see, it's right here. So if you click on edit flow steps, it says query starts at A3 because I ran it. First I ran the query, and now I'm working with this flow step. You can rename this, put any name to it. But in essence, and see, I ran the upsert. So it's all these settings that I had, they're all here. Put IDs into column C, external ID column mappings are all saved. And this is done to be able to reuse your whatever you did. If you ran a upsert like I did right now, I did an upsert and it all saved. So now I can work with my data, and let's say I wanted to switch this all to a different stage name. I can do that, and here on the run flow, I can simply run this, and it does the upsert. So it does whatever is saved, without having to go through mappings every time.
Gotcha. Okay.
The real reason for this was different though. It's because when you have the admin, you can just do your mappings. It's not such a big deal. However, there are use cases when you want to prepare a template for your sales reps, for example. Let's say this was a template created for your sales reps to change only stage names on the opportunities and not be able to change anything else. In this case, I would, so the query is already here. They can log in, select the stage, and pull the queries. And let's change the flow to update and change the mappings to remove everything except ID and stage name. So now only the ID and stage name will get updated. Whatever is in the data, they can use the spreadsheet, type in anything they want, but only the stage name will be updated. And also, so this is controlled on the license level. So if you have a scenario like this, if you want to enable your sales reps to quickly update opportunities without going to every one of them in the browser and wasting time, in this scenario, you buy a team player license for the sales reps, and this is how it looks like. Notice the ribbon. Now all the delete, update, insert buttons disappeared. So in essence, the person opening this template, they can say, come in here, say, all right, let's pull all my information inquiry and result remains. I'll get rid of that. My information inquiry stage names and move them to the next one, quote send, right? They do this, they click on this button, and boom, it's done. And at the same time, you don't want to let your sales reps be able to do upserts, inserts based on random mappings, because most of the times they don't have any idea about what mappings are, what fields in Salesforce are, and they can mess things up. But this is safe and very easy to set up, and the people like working in Excel and with multiple records.
Yeah.
All right, so let me go back to the enterprise admin. So this flow functionality, you can do things like crazy stuff here. So you can link these flows to a button, for example. There's going to be just a button on without even seeing this ribbon. You can have a VBA button that will run whatever flow you want. You can run, let me go to the actual flow step, show you what it can do. So all these tabs, that's different operations that the flow step can do. First of all, the refresh, that's the query that's associated with it. This is the same as data source. So it just shows up here on the flow steps, but it's exactly the same as data source. Flow operation, this is the push. So whatever is on the push, if it's whatever is set up, query rows is on the push technically here as well, although it is kind of a pull, but that's a discrepancy we have. You can, again, you can set it up here so that they run the flow and the data gets matched, okay, in the spreadsheet, and then you can upload the data. Under settings, you select, if by default it works off of a selection, but you can do all roles, for example, and that will independent of selection. So if you don't want the users to select something, they will just upload all rows from this table. This, what the heck? That was renamed. Oh, why is it not? Okay, the functionality is still there. So this is supposed to be named lookups, because you can define lookups for for related fields. You know, let me get into this a little bit later. I'll just go through this what the flow step can do. It can run a macro. So whatever logic you have in your template, you can set it up to run a macro. And as soon as they click on run flow, it runs a macro, downloads some data, runs a macro, and uploads the processed data, something like that. And you can also run Apex code inside of Salesforce using data from the sheet. So it can grab values from the spreadsheet and run whatever logic you may have in Salesforce. That's just, yeah, well, it's unlimited what you can do here. Let me go back to map IDs. This is actually interesting. I will change, I go to data sources. I will change this query to pull account ID and account name. Let's not do the external ID now. All right, so now, oh, see, we moved all from information inquiry to quote sent. All right, so this is the data. And let me go back to this edit flow and show you. That should be named lookups. So I can define a lookup ID and lookup field. This is a pair of any ID or lookup field paired with any value field. In this case, I probably need the account name. Oh, you know what? First of all, I need to revisit my mappings. So this needs to be mapped to account ID. All right. Now, because this uses the mappings. So I'll do account ID column. This is the column just containing IDs or lookups. So this is account ID, and I'm going to match it, not match it, but link it with the account name. So it's like it basically saves a pair of ID name pair, and you'll see what it does in a second. So when this is done, you can now double click into the name, and it will let you search the accounts by name, for example, in this case. Oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that was too quick. I have like 1.5 million accounts, so and they all test. That was quick. Anyways, yeah. So basically, it looks up accounts, and once found, you can do insert value, and you can see it inserted test and then the ID of that account. Now,
how did you get to? Sorry, I must have missed it. How did you get to that little window, like where you did the?
I double clicked into the name.
Oh, you double click. Okay, I was like.
Yeah. So that when this ID value pair is established, the lookup on the flow step, it's not straightforward. That's why I'm showing you. But when this is established, you can basically look up things and think about it as a lookup dialog box, not a lookup control in Salesforce with the little lens on it. You know, when you click on it and you search for accounts. This is for the similar reason, for the similar purpose. Another way it works is I just typed in Zapex here, click and hit enter, and it looks up the ID of that account.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's not found.
Oh,
so
really cool.
It's not ideal because it just uses queries. So if you have multiple accounts named Zapex, it will just pull the first one it finds. So it's not fuzzy search. It's not very precise. Yeah. But in most of the cases, it's enough. You know part of the name, and you just want to get the ID, and you can do that.
Now, I didn't see columns A, B, C, D, or E change, so I'm assuming that's not tied in with this, right? So it's not like...
this little tab, this map IDs, it's going to be renamed. I'm going to make sure this is renamed in the next version. It only ties a lookup or ID field to a name field. That's it, and this is all it's going to work with.
Okay, all right, I gotcha.
And in this case, if I wanted to associate these opportunities with an account, I would actually, the ideal would be different. The ideal scenario would be different though. So I would not have this here, right? Just a separate flow step for this lookup. And then I would create a new flow step saying update opportunities, because I'll need different mappings here. And I'll say update opportunity. And let's, oh, what? Oh, A3. All right, that's better. And account ID, that's all I need. And we'll do selected rows. So the usage of this would be like this. I come in here, I assign my accounts, and then I just select them and say update ops.
Okay, yeah.
So it runs a different flow step now, the update, because the mappings are different.
Gotcha. Okay.
But now if I were to go here, actually another thing you probably know about it, this is open in Salesforce button. If you select,
I've seen that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it just logs in for you and opens it in Salesforce. But now I would expect it to be linked to the new account.
All right.
Details. Oh, yeah, see account Zapex.